Okay, there should be a little message that pops up there. So if you guys would like to introduce yourselves, and then we can just jump right into it.
Okay. My name is Leslie Hall. I have been a coordinator for a long time. For 27 years, I started off in elementary middle school in West Point. Then I moved to 12. I did 4 years there, 12 years at the elementary school. Now I'm on my 12th year at the high school. And I think that adds up to 28. I was never good at math, and I tell my students that before they ask for help. Um, but I'm also, first and foremost, a member of the coalition, then have been on the coalition as in several different capacities, but right now I am the chairperson of the Public Policy Committee.
All right, Leslie Sumata, she does a whole lot for the coalition, has for the coalition. I just got to give her a shout out because, guys, she is filling this position in the vacancy of the retirement of our current, who should be our current public policy chair. So Leslie's doing a second term in that position, and it's a hard job. So I'm going to tip my hat to her for that one because that's a big deal. And I appreciate the fact that she's doing that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Michael Flynn. I am a Youth Services Center coordinator at the Estill County Middle School. Like Leslie, it's a career venture for me. It's January started year 30 for me. So I am at the sunset of my career, as you would put it, but it's always going to be my family resource centers are always going to be my passion. I too am a member of the coalition. Currently serving as the board's secretary. Like Leslie, I've held many hats from president elect all the way up to the end, and now I'm back as the secretary. But I think Leslie and I both will tell you that our passion in this whole adventure has been our public policy work. And while for most people it's a scary thought to work with legislators and to get involved heavily in the advocacy and lobbying efforts of our coalition, it's also one of the most rewarding. So I'm hoping that we'll be able to share with you guys just a little bit of information on how it can be, how we can help make that easier for you guys to get involved in.
And I definitely agree with that. It has been the most challenging yet the most rewarding at the same time. A lot of what we will be talking about today is on our coalition website under advocacy. So we have lots and lots of information, everything from how to find your legislator to how to build relationships with your legislator. So before we can get into, I guess, the difference between advocacy and lobbying, we have to talk about the importance of why we do either. Okay. One, we have to, because we are a part of the government makes decisions for us. The legislators, they do make our budget, and they have ways that they can make decisions for us. We want to always stay in the forefront of their minds and what we do and how we do it. And the funding that is given to us, how it is utilized to best serve the children and families of the Commonwealth. Wouldn't you say, Michael? Why do we ask you? Okay. Why do we ask you to contact your legislators and build relationships? Is because of what I said. We every other year is a budget year. And we have, those of you who have not been around very long do not remember the time when we were truly a grant program. We wrote a grant every year. We did not know if we were going to be funded every year. In fact, I've heard from the 95 when I first got here, they said, honey, you need to start looking at something else because this is not going to be around for long. And it scared me to death. And every year I went into signing that form that, yes, I'll come back if the funds are there, with panic in my heart because I didn't know. And then thanks to our division, which was an office back then, and we want it to be an office again, we'll discuss that in a minute. Thanks to the division and the coalition, we, through advocacy efforts, we ended up being a line item in the budget. So there was a little less of that trepidation of, are we going to have funding? Okay. But we have to still continue to build and keep those relationships through advocacy of what we do. Always invite your legislators to your schools. First of all, you have to know, tell you a little story. I, in 95, when I didn't know anything about this, every time they said, you need to talk to your legislators, I would write long letters, and they were beautifully written to U.S. Senator blah, blah, blah. And that was how I put it on the envelope. That was how I addressed it, not knowing the difference between federal and state. So any of you who have issues talking about, oh, I don't know if I can do this, and I don't know anything about it, that's how little I knew in the very beginning, that I had no idea that, and I would go to Frankfurt like looking for Mitch McConnell. Okay, he's not there. He's in DC. But I mean, so if I can learn it, anybody can. Just don't ever address state legislators as US senator. It's not that way.
So I'm going to chime in with you for just a second, if it's okay.
Yeah, please do.
Because I just want to bring home the point too, guys. Advocacy, when we're talking advocacy, it starts with the grassroots. And when I'm talking grassroots, I don't just mean home advocacy within your center with your legislator, but we've got a due diligence requirement among us to advocate amongst our entire communities, because advocacy is about educating. And we've got to educate not only our legislators on what it is that we're doing, how we're helping remove non-cognitive barriers, and how we are helping students and families become successful and remain successful. We've also got to do that, reach out to our communities, because, you know, right now we're in the middle of a call to action, and we are totally dependent in those call to actions, not only on our membership, but those connections our membership have within our communities who are making those calls and emails as well. So we've got to be willing to step out of our comfort zone in proclamation to make sure that our entire communities know exactly what it is we do and how we do it and why we do it. Because then when it comes time for that call to action and we send those emails out saying, hey, we need you to call Frankfurt, those people in our communities are even going to be more willing to make those efforts for us because they understand why it's important. So advocacy doesn't just reach out to our legislators. Advocacy is self-proclamation across the board within our communities. We've got to make sure that people are well aware and well versed in what we do and why we do it.
Perfect. That's so true. And it's not just through our families, but through our businesses and through our community resources. And I have about between 1,700 and 1,800 kids in the school, depending on the day. And I hate when I get to the end of a year and a kid walks in my office or something and they're like, what is this place? I didn't know what is this place? And especially if they're a senior and they're getting ready to leave. I hate that they didn't know. So I really work hard and try to make sure that I'm out there at each of the class meetings and things like this. You're not going to catch everybody, but you just catch as many people as you can. And you really don't want anybody, especially your students, coming in going, I never knew this office existed or what was in here. It's been a while since that's happened to me, but that has happened before. And I don't ever want it to happen again. I want everybody to know that we're here for them. And it doesn't matter whether you're part of the 20% free and reduced lunch or not. It's open to all the students. Does anybody have any? Feel free to raise hands and ask questions too. If you have any specific questions, we would be happy to take those.
I was just getting ready to say that, Leslie, if anybody has questions, if you'll put them in the chat, I think that'll be the easiest way with as many people as we have on the call. I will monitor the chat and make sure that those questions get to you guys. So.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. One of the ways that we can advocate as well is, and I know a lot of our RPMs are talking to their regions right now about data collection. Okay, having good data about what we're doing is a great way to advocate for why we're here. You know, I have an easy way to get data off my counseling efforts, and I just compare the behavior, the grades, and the attendance from the beginning of the year to the end of the year for those who have been at least 4 months in counseling. And at first I thought, I don't know if this data is going to work. I don't know if we've made that much change. do the work there, do the data collection there, because I have never been disappointed with the data that I have received from looking at my students who are in counseling. So we have a question. Will the move from CHFS to DCBS, are you asking if we will be moved? Okay, we don't know that yet. Do you want to talk on that, Mr. Flynn?
I will. As the bill, Senate Bill 48 right now, as it stands and has been written, it says that we are going to be moved under DCBS. That's what the bill says currently. Now, we have had meetings with the sponsor of the bill, Senator Meredith, who told us that that was it was a mistake in the bill when it was written, and that their recommendation is to move us to workforce development and education. Okay, so we left that meeting with him telling us that his plan was to amend the bill to move us from CHFS to the cabinet for workforce and education development cabinet. As you guys know, you've got the call to action. The coalition is not comfortable with that move, simply because of, not that we have anything against the folks in that cabinet, but just because every policy that we have outside of what's listed in statute, and we've shared that with you guys, everything outside of the statute is a policy that is underneath the cabinets for families and children. When we move from this cabinet to another cabinet, we are going to lose all of those. We potentially can lose all those policies, and the new cabinet can rewrite policies for us based off of what best fits their cabinet, which may or may not be in the best interest of FRYSC. We have operated in this cabinet and in this style for 30 years and are proven successful. Our fear is moving us somewhere else where the potential for those policies to be switched, amended, changed, or it could annihilated completely. And what does that do to our program as a whole? What do we look like after that? No one has ever said that we're ever opposed to moving anywhere based on the fact that we don't like people. It's just because we have the old adage, why fix what's not broken? We are working and working well. We're the last standing arm of CARA in its original format and its original purpose. And it's only because we have had a stable structure in the same area for the last 30 years. That, and plus the fact you have a coalition. I'm going to be honest with you. Probably the number one reason that you still have family resource centers in Kentucky is the fact you have a coalition. Because every time there's been an issue that could endanger our centers and our programs, the coalition has been there to fight that fight. So that's a selfless plug on the coalition's part. So.
Can you all talk a little bit about the difference between advocacy and lobbying, right? Because I know we've got to walk that line, in how we advocate for programs. So can you all talk a little bit about the difference and what we would recommend as far as advocacy, or what the coalition recommends as far as advocacy for the programs?
Well, it is a fine line and a strange line, because all lobbying is advocacy, but not all advocacy is lobbying. Okay. Advocacy is the intent to educate and to like when we're sharing data with our legislators or our community people, when we're sharing anecdotes about what happened at a certain program or whatever, that's advocacy. We're educating. Lobbying in its crudest form means we're asking for something. So if you'll notice, when we sent out the call to action this time, and Mike and I can hang out afterwards if you have questions about this specific call to action, because I know there's a lot going on around it. But when we sent out the call to action this time, we asked for coordinators and to, if you're going to do this from your personal email, do this during extra hours out of the office, because we are asking for something. We are asking for a change in a specific bill. So that's the difference. Advocacy is education. Lobbying, we're asking for something. And that's the most, Mike, would you agree that's the most simplistic way to put it?
Yes, we're not asking for anything to be changed in law.
Right. Right.
And I would just go on to say that when you're looking at the difference between advocacy and lobbying, some examples, you'll see that the coalition will ask people to invite legislators to regional receptions or to the big receptions we have in Frankfurt. That is advocacy, and the fact that we're only having them come to those events for educational purposes. We're sharing information about our programs. We're showing them how their money's been spent. We're not asking them to give us more money at those events. We're not asking them to make changes in policy or statute at those events. We're educating them or providing them with information. So that kind of information is fine to send on center hours. It's fine to use their center email and all that stuff. Actually, we encourage you to do it that way, because that makes that legislator see how you are, that you're a part of that school, and that these centers are a part of that school. So that's perfectly legal, and it's in all rights. When it gets to be tricky is, for example, we just sent out the call to action. We as public policy have what we call, every 501(c) or group that has any kind of lobbying efforts in Frankfurt is required to register a registered lobbyist. Okay, none of us as FRYSC coordinators can legally be a state employee and be a registered lobbyist. So none of us on public policy, nobody on the coalition board is registered as a lobbyist in Frankfurt. Instead, we have an operations manager by the name of Michael Jones, and I'm sure every one of you have heard his name before. He's a wonderful man, but one of his roles for our board is he's our registered lobbyist. So you'll notice that sometimes things come from Leslie or our president, Megan, and then sometimes things come from public policy from Michael Jones. When it's coming from Michael Jones, it's coming from him because he is also our paid lobbyist, and he can legally send that to your email address without getting any of us in trouble, because we did not do it. Does that make sense? So when you get those emails, that's when it becomes important to know. You can forward that email to your personal email. You can copy and paste that email to a Word document and send that to your personal email. And from that point forward, what you do with it is no longer any concern to the school district, because at that point you've transferred it over to your personal stuff, and you're not using anything school related to share it. So when you get that call to action, that's exactly what I did the night the call to action went out. I copy and pasted the call to action from my school email. I copied it into a Facebook post, and that's where I started. I sent out a Facebook post to all my friends in Facebook world that said, we need you to do this. We need you to do this for us. So I moved everything from my school email at that point over to a personal venue of my own. I'm going to be honest with you, I do the same thing. We were having conversations last night as a public policy board about, I think everybody should have got a second email today in response to some of the legislators who have been responding to our call to action. That all started coming from my personal email to my other friends on the public policy board, because at that point, I don't want to have those conversations on my school email, because they are emails and conversations about changing a law or asking for something specific from a legislator in statute. So that's where it just has to become a fine line. When you're just providing them with information, if you're inviting them to your center, if you're bringing them, asking them to come do an activity at your school, if you just want to send them pictures of a program that you've done, by all means, use your school email for that. When you're asking them to make a change in policy or asking them for funding purposes, then that's when you move it over to personal emails. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you. I appreciate that.
I think that was the last time was in the budget year when we haven't done a call to action for change in a while, but most of the time we do that, that's surrounded by some kind of budgetary issue where we're either asking for more, or well, usually asking for more. But they have been, and I have to show gratefulness to our legislators, because they have been very, very generous over the past few years, and we have not had to fight the good fight, I guess you would say, on any issues. But again, there was a email sent out from the coalition earlier today responding to some negative pushback we've got from some of the legislators. Please, if you haven't read that yet, read that thoroughly. Okay, everything that was in the first call to action in the very beginning that said what in statutes would not change. Then there was a highlighted section that highlighted all the things that could change about us if we were moved. Those are important things for you to know when any legislator says, why are you asking for this? And that's what one of the things the public policy and the coalition tries to do, is to make it as easy as possible. If we've done the research, then we can let you know some of the research that we've done. Of course, feel free to do your own and as in-depth as you would like, or call any of us and ask any questions, but there would be no sense for all 800 of us across 800 plus across the state to be doing our own research and coming up with our own conclusions when the research, you have a coalition to help with that. Again, not saying that you shouldn't delve into it yourself if you want to. We don't want anybody blindly following us, but we will put up the information as your public policy committee see it, and so that you at least have that information to start with. Okay, and we'll always let you know in those emails whether you'll know whether it's advocacy or whether it's lobbying, because we will be asking you to, like we did in this one, please make these contacts from your personal email.
Yes. And you guys will notice a couple of years ago, we did a gratitude campaign with our legislators, and we sent out a call to action to call your legislator and thank them for their support. That was advocacy. That was not lobbying. You could do that call to action from your school email, your school phone. That was fine. And you will, like Leslie said, we will always provide you with that information of if it needs to go off of a personal access, then we will tell you. That will be in the directions. So that's the important thing, is reading those things thoroughly.
Okay, we have another question in the chat about does the Education and Workforce Development Cabinet house the Department of Education and Labor Development? So just a basic
yes
question. Yes, it does.
Just like DCBS is actually under the Cabinet for Families and Children.
Does anybody have any other questions they'd like to pose about advocacy versus lobbying? Now, I do want to let you know that there are some tips to doing this, and we have a lot of information again on the coalition website. But tips for talking to elected officials. And again, I'll tell you, I understand that those of you who are new or those of you who are shy, I started out not thinking that I had a right to talk to these people who were way up here in Frankfurt, and they were above me, and who am I to talk to them about what I need? But who are we not to talk to them, especially if you are a constituent? And that's why a lot of times whether we're advocating or lobbying, but especially when we're lobbying, we try to take constituents with us, because then the legislators have a reason to listen. And I don't mean that in a rude way, but I mean, they have a body of constituents that they're trying to be there for. So we take constituents with us. But that's, there's some things in that you will just have to work over through time. It took me a long time. I followed folks like Mike Flynn and Rebel Reynolds, who is and Brian Akers and Miriam McKenzie, God love her. That I'm not worthy every time I see her. But I have followed through them and watched them. And I love that when we took meetings, that I had somebody there that allowed me to stand in the background and watch for a little while. If you need that, we will be there with you. Okay, you just need to contact somebody from public policy. If you want to meet with your legislator and you have something that you kind of want said and brought up in the meeting, but you're too nervous to do it, that's what we're here for. And we would be happy to have somebody come and stand by your side. If it weren't for the folks that I mentioned, I swear to you, I would still be cowering somewhere in West Point, not knowing, well, not anymore because their school system's not there, but not knowing how to do this. But it takes at least being willing to follow for a little while and observe. Okay, for those of you who don't have a problem talking to anybody, and I'm lucky I'm one of those now, but I didn't used to be. There's a tip sheet on the website that talks to you about talking to elected officials. Like when you meet with them, be brief, be concise. When you go to set up the meeting, let them know specifically, they will write it down. I would like to talk to them about Senate Bill 412, so that they know why you're coming. If you're going with a group, I promise you really don't want to go with more than 4. 4 is a big, huge group if you're going in to talk to them, because not all their offices are big, and you just don't want that many people, but you will need to designate a spokesperson. Okay. Make sure there's one person there that knows that you're going to be the one to speak first, and then everybody can talk, but there's going to be one main person that's going to keep everybody on point. Of course, have a point to be there. Even if it's just education on what we're doing in FRYSC and their community that they're serving, then let there be like a couple points and then get out. Always end the conversation by restating your purpose for being there. Okay. It would, like the year we did the gratitude, I called it the gratitude tour, where we went in and we just kind of thanked everybody. We ended it by saying, again, just wanted to meet with you today to say thank you. Okay. Another plus, always have your facts straight. And although by those emails that are being returned to us from this latest call to action makes it sound like we don't have our facts straight, I promise you we do. Okay, so read that email that went out today about that. If you have an issue, just make sure that you have your facts straight. Always make an appointment. It's the tip list is going to tell you to be on time. You want to be a little bit early. Okay. I have found a lot of information out by being at least 15 minutes early and sitting in their waiting area and just listening. And if they're ahead of schedule and you're already there, then you're on their good graces anyway, because they'll take you then, and then they'll have a little bit of time to themselves. So it always is good to, if you can't be a little bit early, at least be on time.
And be okay with them being late.
Say again?
I said, and be okay with them being late.
Yes, because that could happen too. Always it's like going into Walmart. You're not going to be in a rush because there's only going to be one checkout lane. Okay. And then it's always okay if they're a little bit late, because they can't help some of the things that come at them in a day. Try to make your issue or whatever you're discussing personal. Even if I'm just advocating and giving data to my legislator, it's personal for me, because I think we're getting into a land where there's not a whole lot of us that have been here around as long as me and Mike, but you're looking at two people who still wake up after all these years thrilled to come to work and do the job. So no matter what I'm doing, whether I'm handing out data, whether I'm handing out a one-page sheet that the division has lovingly created for us in a beautiful fashion, I'm handing it out, and it's a personal thing, because this career is personal to me. Be a resource for your legislators. Let them know that they can contact you anytime. And I invite mine to everything. If it's a health fair, if it's a parent night, I invite them to everything. They will not be able to come to everything. A couple of things here and there. I mean, the one thing that mine came faithfully to was they came to judge the door contest for Red Ribbon Week. It was always a nice photo opportunity at the end with the winning door. And those are advocacy things, keeping us in the forefront. But don't just come at them during the times we ask you to call to action. We really need those relationships built over time, so that when we do have a call to action, they already know you, and they trust in what you have to say, and you've built that relationship for them.
Leslie, can I jump in? We got a couple of questions in the chat.
Please do.
Tanya, in reference to your question, if the change occurred, when would it take place? Once the bill passes, and it's signed by the governor, it actually takes place. It becomes law then. Okay. So transitionally, you're looking probably somewhere around the 1st of July. It's just moving a division from one cabinet to another transitionally will probably take longer, but that governance can begin as soon as that bill is signed, and transitionally, you know, you're looking probably at the 1st of July. But we can get you some more information on that to be a little bit more specific, okay? Ramona, in regards to your legislators, if you're inviting legislators to your school or to activities, by all means, share the information. You want to do that with your school's legislator based off the school's address. If you're, you can also contact that legislator during calls to action and say that you're representing a center in that area. But then you also would want to call the representative for your home address, because at that point in time, you are their constituent and you're voting for them, and they're the one. That's the one that's going to more than likely listen to your concern. They'll take your concern if you're not a constituent, but if you are a constituent, those are the people that they're really going to pay attention to. And when you make those calls, you want to be specific in that nature and say, I serve as a family resource coordinator at such and such school in your district. I live, or if you're calling to if you're calling your personal legislator based on your home address, you want to say, I am such and such. I live in such and such district, and I am a constituent, and this is my concern. You want to make that statement to them so that they understand what avenue you're coming to them from, because it will give you, it gives you a different level of leverage in that process.
I literally, even after all these years, I have a sticky note. I have my screen here in front of me, and I have a sticky note right there just above my keyboard that says school legislators and who they both are, and personal legislators. Well, I put mine and who they are, just so that because I get confused, I am getting a little up there in years, but just so that I keep a reminder, and it's on a sticky note right in my face every day. These are my legislators. These are the ones I work with. These are the ones I work with at school. These are the ones that are for that I can vote for. And that was the first thing my senator is a new senator. So that was the first thing I did yesterday when they called session. Is I went down there and I stuck my hand out and I said, yeah, I know you don't know me, but I voted. I'm a constituent. And I told him a little bit about FRYSC, and I had already sent him the call to action he wasn't on the committee, but I sent him a call to action as a point of information of what was coming down the pike for Senate Bill 48. And he was very, very open to what I had to say, but you just have to, know who your guys are, or your ladies, know them and be willing to walk up to them, because their picture is on the LRC. So if you haven't met them before, pull the picture up on your phone and just follow around till you find them.
Tana's asked to make a comment, and I'd love for Tana to make her comment.
Okay.
Hey guys. I've been around the block with Leslie and Michael for a while too. And was on public policy after my term as coalition president. I want to tag on to what Leslie said earlier about educating your community in this process. I had an advisory council meeting a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about Senate Bill 48. And they were asking me, okay, who do I need to call today about what do I need to tell them? And this was before the call to action even came down. But there are people that I know that even know my legislators better than I do. And if they don't know the ones that we're needing to talk to, they know people that know the ones we're needing to talk to. So keep the conversation fresh and talk about it just in general conversations out in your everyday. I mean, I've got bankers, I've got church people. And when I was on the public policy, we had a legislator that, for lack of a better term, we had in our back pocket. He supported us in everything. He wasn't on the specific committees that we needed to talk to, but he got us to the table with those committees we needed to talk to. And so the connections are super, super important. And don't think that just because they're not in your office on that day paying attention to how your money comes down the pipe doesn't mean they can't have an effect on the conversations that need to be had. And the fact that you have people that are willing to go to bat for you on those things are huge.
Thank you. That's one of the things to know as well, is that this isn't just one committee. Okay, one committee is going to make some recommendations. Now, we have sent out a call to action that has asked us to contact the people on that committee just to let them know what we would like to see. Okay, that committee makes recommendations, and it still has to go. I think Mike's already walked through this. It still has to go to the Senate, and the Senate has to work on it. And they could send it back to committee, or they're going to send it to the House, and the House is going to have a committee on it. So it's a little bit of a long road. It's not something that we're worried about tomorrow, but it is still imminent in this session. So I wanted you guys to kind of know a little bit about the process, so that you're not thinking that this committee, these however many people, I don't remember the count, have the ultimate say in what's going on here. So it is worth still talking to you, like I did. I went ahead and sent it to my senator, even though he's not on that committee, just as a point of information that this is what we're asking for. So when it does come down to a vote in the Senate, he kind of knows what we want, you know?
Okay. Michelle, you asked the question, inviting legislators. Are we referring to the local or state leaders? Actually, both. Your local leaders are great partners, and they also have lots of connections with our state leaders. So you want to make sure you're inviting those folks to be parts of your programs whenever possible. But the main focus of our words of saying invite legislators, we're talking about your state legislators, the folks who are serving in the state Senate and the state House of Representatives. And then Carlola, I can't say, I can't go and butcher that, and I'm sorry. Carlola, can you unmute and ask your question so I can better understand what you're asking?
If she can't, are you okay? There you
I'm
go.
here. Yeah, I was just wondering if there was because this change has come up kind of out of the blue, and maybe it hasn't, but we just haven't known about it. Are there specific concerns that we might need to address with individuals or ask our families to speak about on our behalf? I feel like our results and our numbers speak for themselves across the state, but the comment that I just read in your last email about we don't want to change, that it was change that we're against, that kind of made me think, has something happened that I don't know about? Did something happen in another part of the state that might affect us all? Do we need to individually address?
No, I'll address that. Several coordinators and community partners received an email from a particular legislator who addressed their concerns with basically the senator accused the coordinators and the partners of not being well educated on the bill, and said that basically the only reason that he could think of for them to make a recommendation for against this change was out of, he didn't use the word ignorance, but it's kind of the way he promoted it, is out of ignorance. And that obviously if we were asking for change or something we didn't understand, it had to be because we were only fearful of change itself.
Okay.
So it was an assumption made by that legislator that we were asking for change on something we didn't understand. And the only reason we would be doing that is because we were afraid of change as a whole.
Okay.
Does that make
And
sense?
It
And
does
that
make sense.
Yeah, and that is not true. That is, there was a lot of time and effort and research put into this call to action, and looking at every detail of what could change. We're not fearful of change. Our jobs change every day. It is not the same job every day. So that is not one of the reasons. I think it's just something that came out in a response that several coordinators and advisory council and one mom has received via email. So hence, again, that email that was sent out by the coalition earlier today, please read through that very, very carefully. But you had asked, is there what initiated this change? And we've really tried to also let everybody know this is not anything that was totally just come and pointed at Family Resource Youth Service Center. This is a reorganization of the entire cabinet. It has nothing to do with us, let's say personally, but a reorganization from the whole cabinet. And we took the time to put out what we would like to see. And that's basically all that that call to action was an attempt to have a voice in what we would like to see in this change. So.
And
hope that helps.
Since this is a recorded meeting, I feel my due diligence to also respond to that, and the fact that the same legislator who shared that information has since started sharing other information that was a little bit more of a more positive feedback. I'm still not sure that I agree with the accuracy of his statements, but he's not been nearly as controversial or as harsh in his responses. So I think even he has realized that his initial responses were not up to par with the situation. So I had to throw that disclaimer out there because I don't want anybody to say that I totally bashed somebody without actually giving credit for the other side of that story.
No, and I will tell you this much, to all the legislators that I have either emailed with or spoken face to face with, they have all been supporters of FRYSC. I think there was something that just might have hit a few the wrong way, but I think when time settles things down, and we stand our ground. That was that last email that was sent out is please asking the coordinators and whoever they're talking to, even if they've gotten one of those negative responses, please stand your ground. What we're asking for is not going to change in the face of anybody telling us we should change. We've done the research. We've looked at what we would like to see. And again, we're offering an opinion of what we would like to see the change be. Okay. No negative thoughts towards it. This is what we'd like to see. And so just keep in contact with your legislators. If you have any questions again, or if you get any negative responses, please feel free to send it to me or Michael, and we'll look at that. But our response was there in that email today that basically said, let's stand our ground. Anytime we as a group across the state have stood our ground, we have always, and hopefully will continue. I don't put any marks on what will happen in the future, but we have always come out with what we needed.
Pardon the interruption, but I need the following student.
So we have a couple more questions that have come through the chat that I think we might move towards coming directly from the coalition. If that's okay, Leslie and
Yes.
Mike, we can send that to you guys and have that come from the public policy committee, the answers to those questions. today for Wednesday webinar, what we wanted to accomplish was to talk about the difference between advocacy and lobbying, and talk about the importance of advocacy and education, and making sure that you're building relationships and sharing information about what's happening in your centers with not only the elected officials, but also with the community. I think that was a great point to make, is building those relationships with communities and educating folks in the communities. So.
I agree, and I agree with what Michael said earlier on, and that it isn't just our legislators. When you're inviting people into the building, look at your mayors, look at your city council, look at your school board members. They need to just be on an invite list to everything you do. They are not going to show up to everything, but if they do and someone does come, trust me, they're going to let you know ahead of time that they're on their way, or they're going to be there. And make sure, as part of the advocacy, that there's a photo op there. Make sure one of the things you can do to advocate for your center is making sure that you have a personal contact with somebody at the newspaper, the local newspaper, so that you can get your information. I send something into my newspaper every week. If I don't have something from the center, I ask one of the teachers. I stay away from the sports stuff because they have a guy who gets them into the paper every week. But I ask some of the teachers, you doing anything special in your class? So if I'm not putting it in there for FRYSC, I'm putting it in there for our school and what they're doing. But I have a relationship with those people at the newspaper. So make sure you invite them as well. The advocacy are all around, because these people will also at some point in time be able to advocate for you, or for FRYSC, on a level with their legislators if needed. But PR, it's PR of the center. I've had people who have been worried that it was bloating and look at me. But one of the first things that they told me when I was a new coordinator was, do not ever say my center. It is the center. Do not ever say my program. It is the center's program. It has, they were very point in telling me it is not you. It's not about you. So I've kind of had that mindset all along. So when I'm doing PR for the center or for what's going on with we're doing for the families, it doesn't seem like bragging to me, because I'm not bragging on myself. It would happen. Things will go on when I'm gone. But if it's not us there's another coordinator there, the programs will go on. So when we're saying advocate for your center, advocate for the center and those programs. It's nothing to do with us in a personal capacity as coordinator. Does that make sense? Was there another question over here?
I just want to reiterate what Melissa said. Guys, if we've not answered any questions that are directly related to House Senate Bill 48, please reach out to one of the public policy members and ask those questions. We'll be more than happy to address those in more detail that way. Anytime, and that's just not on Senate Bill 48, anytime you have a question about anything that the coalition sends out to you, please reach out to us and we'll be more than happy to answer it. A lot of times we've provided you with that additional information today that was a follow-up to the call of action. A lot of times we have all that, but every time we have all that background information, we just don't send it all out because we don't want it to get jumbled up into the actual message that we're trying to send out. But anytime you have questions about it before you send that call of action out, if you need more clarification, we are here for you to make that clarification, because we would 10 times rather you make a call or email and feel educated about your action rather than you just going blindly based off of what we've said. So if you feel the need to know more, by all means, reach out and let us know.
And just remember the difference: education versus requesting a change, advocacy versus lobbying. Does anybody have any questions? Do you have anything else to say, Mr. Flynn?
I'm going to say that if we sparked anybody's interest today, by all means, seek a position on the coalition, because we are sunsetting quickly on our board, and we need as many fresh faces who are willing to get involved and to take the helm of leadership to the next level. We would really appreciate your activity or your volunteers. So do not be shy of the coalition, and definitely do not be shy of taking on the opportunity to get involved with the coalition as a regional rep or even as a executive board member. Because I promise you, if nothing else has kept me around for 30 years outside the love of my job, it's the connections I've made through that coalition. That coalition is a second family to me. And I mean, it's an amazing experience you've not truly been a coordinator until you've been a part of that coalition. I'm being honest with you. It's the best experience I've ever had in my entire life. So thanks to people like Leslie and Tana and a lot of other people I see on here today. So.
And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I got into it because I was the one left standing when everybody else sat down for the vote. That's how I ended up regional representative. And I thought, oh wow, this is going to be a lot. This is cool. And yes, it did end up being. It ended up being work, but it was so much fun. You never saw it as work, and I still don't after all these years. And if you go through the gambit of the hierarchy, you're looking at an 8-year commitment: 2 years as vice president, 2 years as president-elect, 2 years as president, and 2 years as public policy chair. And that's an 8-year commitment to doing that. But I couldn't tell you that I didn't have so much fun that it didn't even seem like it was an 8-year gig, you know, and was willing to come back when Paula retired to come and give it one more shot at the end of it for the public policy. But it is another family. I can't, I'm the same thing Mike said. It's just a wonderful experience, one that I am not even willing to let go of yet. So if you want to be a part, please let your interest be known.
And if you scroll up through the chat, there's the link. I put the link to the coalition webpage, but you can find it, anywhere. So, and there's also a link to the exit survey, and Beth just beat me to it, posting it in the chat. Also, we'd love to get your all's feedback. I know that I'm super grateful for Leslie and Mike for being here today and sharing this really important information with us. I did make sure I grabbed those questions that we did not have time to answer, and I'll be sending those to them with the folks who asked those questions, so we can get those out to you all for sure. Again, we will have this archived up on the website, the training website, which I promised you guys I would give you the link to. So I'm going to do that right now. And also in just a second, I'll put the approval code. We do have an hour of PD approved. So I'll turn it back over to Leslie and Mike to finish out any comment.
Well, I just wanted to say that not just after the webinar, not just as long as I'm piloting a chair behind a computer in the FRYSC world, please feel free to reach out to me with any questions. Public policy, how did you manage to do your career fair? I don't care what the question is. If I can't answer it, then I have lots of people around me who can. So I would just want to be a useful resource for anybody out there.
I got a lot I'm putting here in chat. And here comes the approval code. I think that's right.
Will that be only here in the chat, or is it going to be when I search, when they search, will they find it in the training?
Yeah, it's been approved in FRYSC Count. So if you do that approved training list, you'll be able to find it there as well. So if you don't get it here, you can get it there.
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Flynn?